Good afternoon, everybody. I don't know how many people are actually following this webinar. I hope that you are ready to start with us this very brief travel in the Enclave project's results and outcomes by a very, very practical viewpoint. And this webinar is going to be recorded. This is also for you to know, according to the GDPR and all the privacy regulations. And then it's going to be uploaded in the YouTube channels of EuroCrime and of the other partners of the project, and on the website of the project itself. So be aware of that, please. The Enclave project is arriving at the end, is an European funded project regarding the interviews and in general the forensic interviews and protected hearings of children, victims or witnesses of violence during civil and criminal trials. Nick Spetsidis, who is our coordinator, will introduce the project in a few minutes. And my role, I am Silvia Ciotti. I am one of the members of the EuroCrime partners team for this project. Is just to introduce you the agenda. The agenda is quite easy. It's very, very quick. Kind of seminar. Our aim is to provide you an insight in the practical outcome that are the result of 2 years funded projects in the sector, in the area of justice in the European Union, involving more than one country. We are 5 partners from 5 different countries. So every partner responsible for a different area, a different outcome of the project, will present the outcomes of that area with a specific focus on the practical issues useful for professionals working with children during this kind of forensic interviews. So first of all, we will have Nicolas Spetsidis presenting the Enclave project as coordinator of the project itself. Then we will have Professor Helena Soleto Muñoz from the University Carlos III in Madrid presenting our comparative country report, which is a very strong effort to provide insight and information, not only by a legal viewpoint, but by different viewpoints about the situation of the forensic interviews with children in those different countries. Then we will have the analysis of the benchmark protocol produced again, coordinated by the Spanish team and by Professor Soleto Muñoz. Then we will have a presentation of the guidelines and the trainings specifically addressing legal professional. And here we will have Sofia Thanasoula from the University of Crete, responsible of this specific field of research for Enclave. Then we will have a part regarding capacity buildings and trainings of victim support organizations, and here we will have Pille Pagan. I hope that I pronounced that well because it's not easy. Our Estonian colleague, they were responsible for these guidelines, and then as responsible for the trainings, I will introduce briefly the part regarding the trainings, and then one of our main interesting resources, the Victim Support Organizations database, and Mari Puniste from the Estonian team will present that to you. And then all the dissemination activities that we have carried out. Please remember that the deliverables, the documents related to these projects are available and can be downloaded freely from the project website. And the main part of them, they are all in English, of course, but the main part of them, as for instance, the practical guidelines, have been provided also in the project languages, which means that they are available also in Spanish, Greek, Italian, Estonian, and Netherlands for the Belgian partners, for the University of Leuven, which is one of the partners of the project as well. Then at the end, we will have a question and answer session, and then comments, exchange of ideas, remarks, whatever. So please, if you have something in mind, just send that through our chat or sign it on a piece of paper just to ask them at the end. We will have Filippo Balistrieri, my colleague, who will be monitoring the chat during the entire workshop. And we will have also Dario taking care of potential technical issues. So if you have troubles in following the webinar with the connection, or if you have some doubts that you wanted to write down in the chat, please do it. And we will have an eye on that during the entire webinar. And at the end, you can ask questions directly and interact with the panelists just raising your hands through the Zoom tool. So without losing other time, I leave the floor to Nicolas Spetsidis, our coordinator, for the presentation of the Enclave project. Nick, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Silvia. Good afternoon to all. From Crete, Greece, from the Union of Women Associations of Heraklion, which is a women organization based in Crete, Greece. I'm going to present briefly the project, the Enclave project. The basic challenge that we have had during this project, this Enclave project, was that we would like to understand and to incorporate the victim story, the children's story, to the interventions and the policies with regards to the child protection, either being victim or a witness of violence. The context of the Enclave project was the EU Directive 29, which establishes the minimum standards on the rights, support and protection of victims of crime. We knew and we were aware that many member states partially implement the directive. We knew and we have seen the details about the lack of capacity of the professionals involved in the process, either at the legal justice system or at a victim support organization, with regards to the forensic interviews of children who are witnesses or victims of violence. Also, we knew that, and it's also true, that many member states have implemented the forensic investigation procedures at a poor level and incorporated partially at the judicial process. And of course, the critical need was to, and still is, to ensure the children's safety and mental welfare during the investigation. The Enclave project is a 2-year project aiming to analyze the context and procedures and determine the training needs of legal and criminal justice professionals and victim support services at 5 European countries, that is Spain, Greece, Italy, Belgium, and Estonia, towards the maximization of the application of Directive 29. Therefore, the starting point is the directive. The main hypothesis was that we see a partial implementation of the EU directive. So we need to understand at which level and at what context is partial implementation. One of major elements is the lack of capacity of professionals towards the forensic interview processes. Then one a significant element is the avoidance of re-victimization of the children. Then the next phase was to determine the training needs of professionals and organize a common pathway on procedures, and then encompass, internalize, and mainstream forensic interviews procedures at EU member states. Of course, we discuss about the European level and then the localization of the processes within the national context. Therefore, the project aims were to prevent the re-victimization of children, to enhance the capacity of legal and justice professionals, of victims and victim support organizations in the implementation of forensic interviews and the protocols, increasing the interprofessional collaboration of different actors involved. This is the multi-agency collaboration, on how professionals by different disciplines could have a long-standing collaboration. Therefore, at Enclave project, we followed some certain victims. So the baseline was the context analysis, of course, a deep analysis of the context. And then we organized the benchmark protocol. Helena is going to talk about that. Then we organized the comparative country report, so to understand what goes wrong and what goes well. And then, based on those elements, we organized the training material for legal and justice professionals. At the same time, we organized a training for victim support professionals. And then at the final end, during this period, which is the final stages of the project, we have organized advocacy meetings with policymakers. Why? Because we need to promote at the local level some arrangements and actions that need to be taken towards the maximization of children welfare and avoidance of re-victimization. Today is the webinar, of course, for victim support professionals, and last week we have had the transnational seminar and the final conference in Brussels. The main aim is to understand the context and organize a comparison mechanism to highlight the good and bad practices and provide room for discussion and brainstorming. And brainstorming among the people from academia and people from the active on the field, to set up a practice standards agenda and promote the change at national and European level. And this is very, very important to see the big picture and the local picture at the same time, so to organize a sustainable mechanism of change. We organize the database of organization, and of course, we organize the material, the training material, and of course, the background material available for all professionals at any level of engagement, so to maximize awareness. One of the main goals of this project is to maximize awareness about this topic. Of course, training and evaluation of material, either on the processes and levels of collaboration. We need to organize a discussion about how we can work at a better stage, professionals of different disciplines, the judges, the lawyers, the psychologists, the doctors. And of course, we all realize that there is a big need for cross-professional training and promotion of multi-agency. We discuss about multi-agency very much, either at our organization, local context, and of course at European level, but we need to understand that we need to have input from cross-professional training, and we need to have operational protocols on that. Of course, we are discussing the next steps. We believe that Enclave project is just the beginning of a deeper analysis, of a deeper engagement of frontline professionals and frontline organizations. And of course, we have had the opportunity to discuss the project, the outcomes and the challenges at the World Society of Victimology. at the World Conference last year that took place in Spain. And of course, our efforts is to raise the topic at the agenda at local, national level and European level. So some remarks that we have seen is a poor implementation of the directive. We all know that, and we know why now. To design and implement similar processes to raise the capacity of relevant professionals, introduce and implement multi-agency collaboration, we need for a collaborative action of legal community and social services to maximize child safety of the child. We need to include the trauma-informed care activities at any level of abstractions, and we are going to see that that notion, the trauma-informed care activities at any level in the future. And we need to take that into account. Sensitize the justice community on the process and the accuracy of the implementation of the process for the welfare of the child. To revisit and rethink a little bit how the justice system is performing towards the children and how we could avoid re-victimization and at the same time maintain the fundamental element of innocence of the perpetrator within the justice system, of course, to set up the minimum, and this is one major challenge that we are going to see in the future, the minimum safety standards for the child who is victim, witness, and violence in Europe. So we can see that we have started from the capacity building challenge of professionals, the poor and partial implementation of the process, of course, to ensure the children's safety. This was the main hypothesis. And now we incorporate on that the introduction of minimal standards for the safety maximization of children, the trauma-informed care approach, and the institutionalized multi-agency collaboration covering all levels of the process. And this multi-agency should follow a staged process. It's not, and based on a very good needs assessment of the actors and, of course, in overall of the victim. You could find, of course, as Silvia said, all the material at the project at the website of the project, the Enclave project. We have developed very good and very comprehensive guidelines. Thank you very much, Silvia. Thank you very much.
So, thank you very much, Nick. Thank you for this presentation, and thank you so much for having indicated our website, which is enclaveproject.eu. As you understood from Nick's presentation, the aim of the project is not only to make good research, but also to provide very practical instances to the professionals working in the field, because our aim at the end of the day is to provide tools to effectively protect the rights of children involved in trials after having been victims or witnesses of crime and violence in particular. However, to have this kind of practical outcomes, we needed a very strong research basis and academic research, analyzing and comparing all the data and the information from different countries, also in the light of the European Union Directive on Victims of Crime. So this part has been coordinated by the University Carlos III in Madrid. And regarding this part, I leave the floor to Professor Helena Soleto Muñoz, who will introduce you to the comparative country report and then to the benchmark protocol developed during Enclave. Please, Professor, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Silvia. Thank you for organizing this seminar, and thank for the assistance of the people who's here with us. I'm going to present some of the deliverables that are available on the website of our project. that I will later put the links here that are in the languages of the partners and in English, of course, and that's we are going to begin with the benchmark protocol and the comparative report. I'm going to share the screen. And okay, I think it's okay. Yeah. Okay, so, well, concerning the benchmark protocol, the objective was the creation of a framework for the 5 countries. And as the participants know, we have two countries from Northern Europe and 3 countries from Southern Europe, and with very different economical level and population and culture, some cultural differences, and of course legal differences. The objectives would be increasing the knowledge of the professionals concerning this issue of the treatment of child victims of sexual violence, usually. And at the beginning, we had to decide if this objective would be for every crime, let's say for witnesses of sexual violence against other people, but we finally did develop our work concerning child victims of sexual crimes. So the objective would be to provide guidance to implement best practice in the forensic interview. That's the main, let's say, a special treatment that we did develop. What we had as on our central point was the directive of victims' rights. Of course, United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, and the European Barnahus Quality Standards. As I think all participants know, Barnahus model developed in northern countries is now one of the models, the ideal models for the treatment of child victims of sexual crime overall during the first steps of the procedure. Following our research on previous projects as retreats, we did want to focus on the interest of victims, in this case, in interest of their families, usually, or other people supporting children, instead of speaking just plainly about rights. Of course, the Victims Directive speaks about rights because it's a legal product, but we thought that in sexual violence it was very interesting to introduce the point of view of the victim, and for doing so it was very interesting to understand what the victims seek from the justice system, and not only what we think, we adults think that they need. So we reflected on participation, on respect, on support, security and protection, an interest that we did create, the minimization of the stress and maintaining a good mental health, support, privacy or dignity. And we did think that interest of victims are different in every case. So that's a very important issue to produce a good analysis of the interest of the specific victim, and that, of course, depending on the age of the victim, interests would be very different. For example, privacy would be probably the most important interest of a teenager, and probably security and protection would be a more important interest for a 6-year-old victim. So we tried to understand what the directive was protecting in coordination with this interest, and the specific measures that can be taken to ensure the protection of the rights and the interest of the victims. We did structure the protocol into categories and 6 subcategories, linking rights and interest with the directive and minimum standards, and try to measure the level of compliance of countries with minimum standards. We try to focus on positive issues as promising practices and general recommendations. As you can imagine, we found very important obstacles and practice that were not so good. So we tried to make recommendations regarding this. Here you can find those categories, and well, as Nicholas did explain, the integrated system is one of the objectives of the directive and the politics of European Union, and mechanism to guarantee children real access, the idea of the child-friendly environment regarding the rooms and the buildings, etc. Details that, at the end of the day, they make a difference in the experience of justice of children. The other important issue that we did work on was forensic interview or video recorded interview. So that's it looks like it's the more important instrument for respecting the rights of the child and at the same time providing evidence for the criminal procedure. And well, we did study the capacity of the interviewers doing this job, and of course related to their training and the methodology that they did develop. For example, we have here an example about the direct report of children. As we understand, usually in our systems, parents have the right to make to give the report crimes, but the directive has asked us to provide real possibilities of doing so. For example, for promising practices, we had some good practices as in Estonia or in Spain. For example, this specialized court that we have in Canary Islands for specialized on child victims courts, or this simple and easy promising practice as of, for example, to have an invitation to a pretrial familiarization visit. We think that is a very good practice and a very easy to develop one. Here you can find other promising practices that are very interesting for this. access to justice has to be not only real but adequate. So we recommend that states review materials. There is a need of having material that it can be understood by children that can have, of course, different ages. So this is one of, for example, of the recommendations that we did develop. We did measure the alignment of minimum standards of our practice, and it was a complicated procedure, methodologically speaking. And well, we obtained the product that we have, and that I will share in the chat the connection with the products in our website. Concerning the comparative reports, our idea was to increase the knowledge of professionals in particular on Victims' Rights Directive and the Convention of the Rights of the Child, and we did want to contrast the knowledge and application and mapping the forensic interview protocols and the impact of those protocols in these countries. So we had this complicated methodology, having, as you know, in these times of COVID, interviews with many professionals. As you can see, more than or close to 200 professionals were interviewed or filled a questionnaire. And we wanted to have participants from, of course, that work around the justice system, but with different approaches. What the more important conclusion, as Nicholas did say, we need a integrated system. We all have fragmented systems, and we need that the health, the education, social areas, justice in the process that are involved when a crime as important as those we are studying happen. We, of course, need to make a change and understand child victim as a true right holder, and surpassing somehow the idea that children and their rights belong to their parents, and the justice systems have to integrate this idea and let a real access system for children. So a conflict of interest, etc., have to be managed in every country, because it's a very high possibility that there is this kind of conflicts. As we know, many of the sexual crimes happen in the family entourage or social entourage of the person, so the conflict of interest can happen. It is a necessity to have a specialist training, and it was very interesting. We had this week our last training here with the police and doctors, and some of the policemen stay at the end of the class, and they say that for them, that the impression that was that they couldn't do that they were banished to interview the child. So that for them was shocking that interrogating the child as they were doing was doing a bad. It was producing a very bad impact on the procedure. Of course, that they were beginning to make this assumption with our training. So it is not widely known the impact of a bad treatment of the information, of the questioning, etc. So for us, it was at the same time shocking, but at the same time positive, as we were having some impact on the knowledge of these persons. Yes, of course, training and feedback should be two-folded, and okay, and we need that professionals adhere to best practice strategies and to in this integrated system, understand the limitations of their role in the justice system. So it's a complicated objective. Overall, in groups as police, that when they specialize in child offenders, they are a little bit entitled. They think that they are entitled to manage child victims too, and without special training. So that's one of the important conclusions and objectives. It's important to establish clear criteria for the forensic interview as it's a key to facilitate the proper work of all the professionals and reduce the risk of secondary victimization. We were studying, as you know, and later I will make some reference, and the victim journey. So in general, victims and child victims are questioned by different professionals, and who develops those criteria for the use of the forensic interview and the not interrogation from a police. Well, is a very important objective. And the multidisciplinary and interagency cooperation. In our last training, psychologists were saying that they would not understand the work of social workers on this activity. So for them, even if they are the most specialized group, they were not thinking that social work could add. And social workers who were part of the trainees would say that their work would add very much concerning the entourage of the child and many details that probably psychologists are not aware. So there's still a lot to do. The importance of a child-centered approach, of course, and opposed to what we have been doing in those last years, and guaranteeing a child-friendly environment regarding the building access, the waiting, the interview, and the observations room, and of course, the technological equipment. Of course, the protocol, the standardized interview, and the other tools and props is a very controversial topic, and our colleagues, maybe they are going to speak about this later, about the training on this. So thank you for your attention. I will go, I don't know, Silvia, directly to the benchmark protocol?
Yes.
To the policy recommendations?
Yes, I think yes.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah, I think that you can see it, okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Perfect.
Perfect. So concerning just a few minutes for speaking about policy recommendations, and the objectives would be to help develop a good implementation of international best practice, the directive concerning overall forensic interview procedures. And we had those standards and the pillars for those recommendations. And we did try to have this approach to the individual, the microsystem, the meso, the exo, and the macro system, trying to change a very classical point of view regarding children. So child-friendly justice and Council of Europe work on the last years introduces the most relevant standards. As you know, European Union is part of this objective of Council of Europe. Concerning education for children and parents, is going to prevent and to help manage the situation in a micro and meso system, but other measures as community education, media, programs, preventive programs, or prevention of repeated offenses could work at the exo or macro system. Data collection, state funding, specialized environment, access to justice, support service could work, of course, at the macro system, but the support service can make a difference at the macro system level. Multi-agency cooperation, training, forensic interviews, and monitoring mechanism are measures that can make a difference in the, let's say, exo and macro system. For here, we have an example for the forensic interview. So encourage the realization of recordings as pre-trial evidence should be a standard practice to minimize the risk of secondary victimization. On the one hand, is going to help reduce the number of interrogations and to let the victim sit forward, and at the same time preserve the testimony for deterioration because of the time and because of the issues that and the way that memory is maintained, and of course avoid contact between victim and offender. So clear regulation and criteria and technical criteria are necessary for having this activity developed, and of course take into account the age discrimination measures. So it's very different to develop the activity for a minor of 8 years and to a 17-year-old victim. So in the Spanish case, the forensic interview for minors under 14 years is mandatory since 1 year and some time in Spain. So now courts are organizing themselves for doing this work. So I thank you. I try to respect time, and that's all from my part. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You respected the time absolutely perfectly and the schedule. And I would like to highlight the great work done by the Spanish team, because all this research part was not just based on literature references and well-known paths, documents, and methodologies. But a very big part of the effort was to collect the opinions and needs from professionals in a non-easy period, because please do remember that the Enclave started practically during the COVID period and lasted 2 years. So at the beginning, the first phase, which was quite critical because on this needs assessment, all the other deliverables and activities were based. So this needs assessment was fundamental for everything. To collect all this information and then to compare them. For instance, considering the differences among different countries, the different among professionals. For instance, in Italy, let's say, lawyers have a role during the protected hearings of children. In other countries, they do not. So also by this viewpoint, to understand the roles and then the needs and what could be done, what was necessary, what was not absolutely an easy task. And all these practical documents, opinions, qualitative research was connected to the more, let's say, traditional desk-based activity. So it was really an impressive work. And all these documents are available on the project website. By the way, the benchmark protocol, I think, has been also traduced in all the languages. So you can easily download the protocol and consider that, because now we are presenting you what we produced. And of course, we cannot go into detail, but this is just the flavor of the cake. Just go on the website and take a slice of Enclave and taste it properly. So thank you so much. And I think that we can move to Sofia Thanasoula from the University of Crete and to all the training documents, training activities, all this part specifically addressing the legal professionals, because in Enclave, we decided at the beginning to keep two different, let's say, paths. One was addressing the legal professionals and the other one was addressing victim support organizations and psychologists, psychiatrists, and so on. And then we mixed everything at the end. However, because we understood that a multidisciplinary approach after the trainings, as to say, as the conclusive part of the trainings, was beneficial for both the categories. Sofia, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. As Silvia said, I'm going to present you the training manual developed in terms of the Enclave project. This training manual was addressed to criminal justice and legal professionals in respect to the forensic interviewing of child victims of sexual abuse. This was the target group mass, the criminal justice and legal professionals, for instance, judges, police officers, prosecutors, and forensic interviewers, if existing in all the 5 participating countries. The aim of the assessment of the needs of professionals was to assess, in the first place, their training needs, and the second goal was to fulfill through the training seminars these educational needs. The methodology followed were interviews or focus groups under the Work Package 3 of the Enclave project. We also elicited information from the survey and the interviews of the previous phase of the project, namely the transnational comparative report and the benchmark protocol that Dr. Soleto presented you just before. We also included in the assessment of the needs of professionals the relevant literature and, of course, the findings of other European projects, such as the Retreat project. the main findings that we have from the field, first of all, regarding the legislations, policies, protocols, and guidelines, was that although in
sorry
yes?
to interrupt you, but the slides are not moving on my screen.
Okay. Wait a second to fix it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
I can hear in the background Nick,
Yes.
who is one of our magicians,
Nicholas.
our wizards. Yes, of course.
Nicholas
when we have a technical
here.
problem during presentation, webinars, whatever, Nick is always the
Okay.
solution. So,
Is it changing now?
Oh, yes, yes. Thank you. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
Nicholas
again.
fixed it.
Of
It
course.
wasn't me, as you heard. So, although the existing adequate legislations in many countries, there are gaps in the practical implementation of the law. So what we need is steady replication of both the main international and national instruments. And above all, we need to link children's rights with specific interests and with corresponding measures. We have to uphold the best interests of minors, to learn how to effectively communicate with minors, to ensure meaningful access to complaints procedures and forms of redress, to increase children's involvement in decision making. Of course, we talk about children, victims or witnesses of violence or abuse. We also need to provide specialized training, especially on forensic interviewing and ongoing professional development. And we need to address barriers to implementing the recommended practices. In most of the cases, we need to reform the law and follow a more child-friendly and child-sensitive approach. And we need specialized units for children. In some countries, we have to say that some actions have already taken place, such as in Spain with the organic law and in Belgium, as well as in Estonia. But in Italy and Greece, we see that there are still many gaps that should be overcome. So regarding the training now, the basic needs of professionals were linked to the fundamental knowledge and fundamental skills. We're also linked to the knowledge of minors' characteristics and the corresponding skills. And lastly, the specialized knowledge and skills were also needed as part of specialized training focused on the recognition of child abuse, the safety planning, the acknowledgement, recognition of the signs, prevention, and or making amendments for secondary victimization, etc. I don't analyze the other topics because you will see them in the following slides. Regarding the multi-agency cooperation, according to the professionals that participate in the survey, there is a need for policies, protocols, and guidelines regarding cases of minor victims and witnesses of violence. There is also need for corresponding training for professionals and services involved on how to effectively create networks and how to collaborate. There is need for promotion and adoption of a multidisciplinary approach that would ensure the protection of the rights of the child. We also need strong links between the criminal justice system and the social sector, because we see that there is a fragmented communication and collaboration until now in most of the cases, not in all countries. We want to stress this fact. We also need formal and effective coordination mechanism with adequate geographic coverage. This was a need found in most of the countries. And last but not least, We want holistic approaches promoting minor victims and witnesses of violence recovery, encompassing a continuum of interventions before, during, and after the criminal procedures, because minor victims need our services not only during but also after the criminal procedures. The trauma does not stop when the final decision is set. It follows children after the 18 years old or after the final case, the resolvement of the case. So the development of training material for professionals, it was a comprehensive training set of materials on the practical aspects and tips on the application of legal framework concerning the forensic interview procedure for child victims and witnesses of abuse, relevant for the whole Europe and in line with the Victims Directive. It includes topics such as how to explore the disclosure of child sexual abuse. We refer to the child sexual abuse accommodation syndrome, to the factors that affect the process of disclosure, what happens after the disclosure, and of course, some guidelines for professionals. We also have included quality standards of forensic interviewing, the protocols and the models regarding forensic interviewing, the structure of the interviewing, and we analyzed the 3 phases of the forensic interviewing. We also talk about the use of additional tools, the advantages and disadvantages of such tools, the anatomical diagrams, the RATAC, and again, the advantages and disadvantages of these tools. We also talk about the forensic interviews of children with special needs, the deterrence to disclosing sexual abuse, and why children with special needs have bigger difficulties in revealing the sexual abuse, how we should prepare children for the forensic interviewing, the forensic interview per se, and the use of extraverbal communication aids. At the 5th chapter, we have the cultural competency and diversity. Again, how to prepare, contact the forensic interviewer and the role, the forensic interview and the role of the interpreter. And some important considerations after that, the basic knowledge and guidelines, the developmental stage of children, the investigation of the knowledge and capacity of the child being questioned, the wording and content of the questions, the objectivity of the interviewer, flexibility and avoidance of suggestive techniques, and of course, some tips about being an effective interviewer. Lastly, we have the assessment of the credibility of the allegations, the criteria, the common mistakes, the significant evidence that strengthens the credibility of a child's allegation of sexual victimization. This training material, according to the expressed by the professionals' needs, were divided in 4 modules. First of all, we have the fundamental knowledge that I present you in the beginning. This knowledge includes the child sexual abuse, the types, prevalence, and main characteristics of this kind of abuse. Of course, the perpetrator's characteristics and his relationship to the victim, the manifestation of child sexual abuse in all levels and contexts, namely in real life, online life, in cases of global crisis and emergency periods, such as during the pandemic of COVID-19, the consequences of both child sexual abuse and trauma, the typical behaviors behind these 2 cases, and the impact that trauma and child sexual abuse have on all levels, the typical characteristics of disclosure, the secondary victimization by the criminal justice system, its prevalence and context, the characteristics, and the impacts of secondary victimization on victims. And then, both in fundamental knowledge and skills, we have the basic counseling skills, namely empathy, active listening, and body language. Some very important skills when we talk about professionals working with children. We have skills about cooperation and collaboration with other professionals, how to keep boundaries, how to self-reflect, and how to recognize our own blind spots, stereotypes, and prejudices, the role description and the distinction of roles, and of course, how to recognize the difficulties and challenges, how to ask for help and or for supervision. The knowledge of children's characteristics and needs included in the training material and in the training seminars were linked to the issues of memory and credibility, the suggestibility, the age and developmental issues, the presence of children with disabilities and or complex communication needs, and of course the issue of the cultural effects. The special knowledge and skills that lack was identified in many professionals had to do with how to recognize child sexual abuse, how to acknowledge, recognize the signs and or eliminate the influence, misleading, undermining, leading or hurting by a professional towards minors, and the issue of secondary victimization, and of course the benefits, importance and necessity of forensic interviewing. And going to further to the forensic interviewing per se, professionals need, and it was provided to them, a further training on the purposes, models, and protocols of the forensic interviewing, the existing best practices, the principles, the structure and stages of the forensic interview, the recognition and the process of the recognition of true and false allegations, and of course the basic rules and considerations. We have some other chapters, but I want to respect the time we have and the other speakers, of course. So I will proceed to the last chapter. Here are the phases. The last one that I want to stress is the fact of the multidisciplinary team. Forensic interviews are best conducted within a multidisciplinary team context, as coordinating an investigation has been shown to increase the efficiency of the investigation while minimizing at the same time system-induced trauma in the child. So it's very important for the child per se, but also for every professional to work in a team. It's better for us, it's better for the time, for the child, and it's better for the evidence that should be collected. That was all from me. Here's the training manual. It's also available at Enclave's website and you can download it for free. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sofia. And I remember you that also this training manual has been translated in all the project languages and is available not only in English, but also in Spanish, in Greek, and so on and so on. Mm-hmm. So this presentation was very, very interesting, and it's fundamental also to introduce the other presentations because this one and the following ones are talking about trainings. Trainings is one of the core activities of Enclave because we really believe in practical outcomes and not only in books and report. And also, as you can see, these guidelines and training materials are very, very, very practical. So the point is, Okay, but you were saying that this work package in the project is a kind of a chapter. Okay, so this chapter of the project is about the legal professionals. Perfect. Okay, but Sofia just explained us a lot of things connected to psychology, psychiatric issues, how to carry out the interview of the children, and so on and so on. As you know, in practically with different nuances, but in all the countries, the forensic interviews with children are carried out through or with the support of a professional in children psychology or psychiatry, and so on and so on. So why are you providing this kind of information to legal professionals? Okay, it's easy because the other professionals, they already have this kind of knowledge. The point is that when we were carrying out the assessment at the beginning of the project, we were a bit surprised because practically in all the countries, there was always someone saying, but they do not understand what we are doing. We are carrying out forensic interviews. We are using protocols. For instance, this was something that one psychologist asked us. So look, we have protocols. We have to follow protocols, procedures, but the legal professionals as lawyers or judges, they do not have protocols for interviewing the children. No, they have procedures. They have the criminal procedure, but this is something connected to the legal basis. In many cases, professionals on both sides are not aware of the professional and most of all technical background that the others have. So our idea was to provide to legal professionals a very strong insight on the basis of the protocols and procedures followed by the other professionals during interviews, to better understand their role during these interviews and what it is possible to ask them to provide or what is not possible to provide. So this is why this kind of training was focused on those aspects. And you will see that in the other chapter, the upcoming one, which was chapter number 4 in our project, the viewpoint is different because the target is different. So I now pass the floor to Pillet Pagan from WSIC from Estonia. This team was in charge of preparing the guidelines for the training of victim support organizations, and they did a great job, I think, too. So please, Pille, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. It is very good to be here, and I'm glad that we have this full material ready. So I will share my screen and talk about what is our role and what our support services actually doing. Just check everybody sees my screen, right? Yep, good. Hello, my name is Pillet Pagan, Women Support and Information Center. For 20 years now, we are supporting female victims of domestic violence and their children. And of course, when we are talking or meeting survivors of domestic violence, often it happens that children are telling something that is clear for us that they have been exposed to sexual abuse themselves or they have seen. And it is always very difficult to listen, to see, but that for us as professionals, we need to be prepared and we need to be trained to react correct in order to avoid harm and to be as present and as compassionate as possible. So a little bit I speak about how to do it, but generally, as previous speakers already have said, there is more deep material, what, how, and when to do in our guidelines. So this time, guidelines for victim support organizations. I will start now. Definitely, we are first points of the meeting of victim of sexual abuse. So we are crucial members of this support network who starts working then. It can be that police might be sometimes, but often it comes via either victim support service or via women's support services like we are, or child daycare people who teachers who are somehow figuring out that something is incorrect. And then we need to know what are the best procedures to support child and in the same time not to damage evidence that children can give or child can give. So just I added the paper here that sometimes we usually, when we think about children, survivors or victims, we think about small ones, but also child is up to 18 years old. So when child is 14 and well developed, it still is a child. So just for us to remember, although I believe that everybody who is interested in listening is aware of it. And what they are experiencing is very tough, very difficult, and they are reacting differently. So they are experiencing trauma, and when children are smaller, then they don't even understand what they are experiencing. So they may react, they may behave very strangely or very differently. So, but in each and every time, it always affects the child. So when this happens, then we are dealing with complex trauma, and when we are not addressing this issue early enough, or we don't pay attention, or if parents or if families are trying to hide it or scare child to not report, not talk about it, it means that the child is developing whole complex of issues that they are carrying during their whole lifetime. We have, in our cases, we have discussed and talked and counseled victims or survivors who have been survivors or victims in early childhood, and now they are adult, 30 plus years old people whose brain somehow activates these memories that they have forgotten, they have dissociated from, and then they have all different physical issues. So everybody needs to, if no, then let professionals know the child is in danger or have been in danger. We all know that our duty, every adult's duty, is to inform about child in need or child in danger. Otherwise, we are dealing with very broken adults who may not even live too long through adulthood. And victim support organizations' role is as a main thing to be present, to be there, but to support children and possibly maybe older victims the way that harm them the most, and to be there to ensure that secondary victimization or re-victimization does not happen. And we always have to avoid any conflicts. So how we usually get to know that something bad have happened to child is our child psychologist starts working with family, mother and child, and then child is giving some information to, we have female psychologist, so to her, and that actually means that if we have procedures and cooperation guidelines in a place in a country, and now I'm just talking about Estonia, about the Estonian experience, then we have to stop there and inform forensic interviewers who are often or usually specialized police force, or they are from Barnhouse, which is children's house, who can come and start interviewing child with video cameras present. So child can be first just interviewed, hopefully one time only, in safe environment and with right questions. And that is one very important, what we also have experienced ourselves, that when we are interviewing child first, then child may not to talk about the thing or the issue anymore with other interviewers, which means we are losing evidence, and or police or prosecutor or judge says that we have damaged the evidence, we have planted ideas to child, therefore it is not reliable information anymore. So it is really important that you know what are your country's victim support organizations' roles, you make it clear, and you agree with stakeholders. So ideally, you have in a country Barnhouse where there can be forensic medical examination done, forensic interviewing done with tools that help child the most. And when we keep supporting after these forensic duties are done, hopefully and probably child still keeps coming to us because they still need support. Never ever we ask anything about like what's wrong with you. Like there is nothing wrong with person. There is wrong with things that are done for a person, and then in some case, in this case, child. And friendly and supporting both body language, voice, everything. Sentences to use, we have some taken out from here, but it is general support, and we are not forcing child to do anything. We just are there. When child doesn't want to talk, we just play with her, him, her. And never be like in any way offensive. Thank them to be trusting and never doubt anything what child says. It might be, maybe sometimes it might be wrong what they say. It's not our role to doubt it. It is other professionals' role to doubt it. And these guidelines that I very briefly just went through has these chapters and has also additional learning materials you could and should use and study. These all materials are listed in our project website. So please feel free to use them, and if there is any need, then we can continue talking or discussing on how to successfully create the safe environment for children who are victims and survivors or witnesses of sexual abuse. No child should be without help. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. This has been a very relevant presentation of the guidelines regarding the victim support organization, because Pille said something which is particularly relevant, and I will examine that while trying to start my presentation. Let's see if something is happening. Okay, can you see that? Can you see my presentation?
Yes.
Yeah, perfect, perfect. So let's start with, hopefully. Okay, Oh, my computer is a bit slow today because it's updating. I do not know what. So, which is the point? Pile was saying that in some cases, judges and lawyers, public prosecutors said to the social workers, or however, to the volunteers or professionals from the victim support organization, that they somehow damaged the evidence, interviewing the children in a non-proper way. This is very, very important. Why? Talking now about the training for victim support professionals based on the guidelines that we have examined so far, we have to understand, first of all, that the viewpoints of professionals by the legal and the victim support organization, these two viewpoints are different because the interest, the core interest is different. The interest of the legal system is to collect evidence. This is sad, can we say, but it is fundamental. It's fundamental also to provide justice to the victims themselves. It is the only way to understand if the defendant is really guilty or not, and to decide the penalty in different cases, and so on and so on. So the legal system, by its nature, is focused on evidence and the collection of evidence. Unfortunately, for the victims, in many cases, let's say always, they are one of the main sources of evidence. What they say during the interviews, during the protected hearings, is fundamental, because let's think, for instance, to sexual violence. In many cases, the victim is the only one beside the perpetrator who was present to the event and knows what went on. So to interview the victim is interviewing a person providing evidence. So to protect the evidence is one of the main goals, is the main goal by the legal viewpoint, while the main goal for the victim support organization is to support the victims. So professional skills and procedures are different. The core interest is different, and in many cases, the only way to protect the child and to collect a valid, reliable evidence is to inform the professionals. If the professionals, they know the different roles, what's going on, how to behave, when to stop, it's the only way to obtain a reliable evidence. Of course, the fact that this evidence is valid or not, most of all in the case of very little children, is one of the main points during a trial, because if the evidence is not considered strong enough, in some cases, if there is not a physical evidence deriving, let's say, from a medical inspection, in those cases, to arrive to a final sentence against the potential perpetrator is not easy. So when we started our capacity building based on these guidelines, and not only on the guidelines, this training was organized in a way to provide different tools to the victim support professionals in order to ask for support and at the same time to better understand the entire procedure. The procedure around the forensic interview of children is very complex and includes different roles, different timing, and it's different country by country. It's also evolving. For the Italians, you know that actually in Italy, the so-called Cartabia reform is going on. It's a very big reform of the entire legal system by a procedural and by a core viewpoint, and it is also addressing practical issues, including forensic interviews, including the analysis, and so on and so on. And it's a kind of a passage now, which is complicating things a lot, and also the roles of the professionals involved have been changed again, the procedures changed, and the point is that, again, resources are not enough to face all these changes. So this is something which is a kind of a developing process. It happens to us during the project that we had to update deliverables which were already concluded, ended, because after some days there were some new laws, some new decision from the different legal systems impacting on what was written in those deliverables. So to think that everything is set and everything is understood is wrong, because everything is changing, and also this training shall be provided and updated during time. So first of all, we organized the training for victim support professionals around three main points. The first one, the database, and Mari is going to talk about the database in a few minutes, so I will not enter into this topic. Just saying that this is a very relevant tool for professionals, practical, is on our website. Again, it's for free. It's in all the different languages of the project plus English. So it is very, very easy to use. Then we have the guidelines, and Pille just explained to you which are the main contents of these guidelines, and then the guidelines, the experience collected during the creation of the database have been, let's say, transferred in the capacity building of victim support professionals. So first of all, we had these local workshops for victim support professionals at national level, local, national, it depends, in all the countries involved in the projects, based, of course, on the guidelines. But during the workshops, it was, and while organizing them, it was clear that it was not enough just organize them with the victim support professionals. It was also necessary to involve other kind of professionals from the legal field in order to put all of them in a kind of a network, and in helping them translating different technical and scientific language. You know that EuroCrime is a think tank. The role of the think tank is to put different entities into contact and communication, to create network, and to help translating different kind of technical and scientific languages, helping people to understand and to work together. So in this case, it was clear for us that it was necessary. And for instance, in Italy, we organized these workshops online in order to allow people from the entire country to participate. We had, I think, 207 participants. And the main thing for us was not the number of the people, but most of all the fact that together we had the psychologists, psychiatrists, social workers, but also police officers, a lot of them, and some lawyers and judges as well. So to put all these people into communication was absolutely fundamental to help them understand different kind of viewpoint. Of course, these workshops were in the local languages in order to facilitate communication and exchange of knowledge and new skills. Then we have this webinar, which is also a part of the communication training dissemination of the project. It is in English and it is addressing victim support professionals, but not only them. As we said, to involve different kind of professionals with different kind of background for us is very, very important in order to provide them also context to ask information. Personal contacts are very relevant for skill exchange, for instance, information exchange, and also to help people from different kind of legal system to understand how things are going on in the other countries, which are the trends, because at a European level, there are trends in the legal systems and new laws, reforms, and so on and so on. So also this inclusive approach has been kept also for the webinar. And as you know, actually the language of this webinar is English. The webinar will be recorded and then made available also on YouTube. So we hope that it will reach the maximum number of people possible. Conclusions, very, very briefly. The multidisciplinary approach demonstrated during the entire project to be relevant, to be proactive, to be positive, and to bring results, most of all. And also for the training, not only for the analysis, but also for the training, to have this interagency training, exchange of documents, ideas, skills, information, knowledge was considered absolutely fundamental, first of all, by the professionals involved. It was not something that was top down. It was not something that we figure out. It was something that they asked. So it is really a bottom-up approach by this viewpoint, and we are particularly happy about that because it means that the people were really involved in what we did. The guidelines were absolutely fundamentals. You can find them online. As Pille said, please use them. They have been created for you. To be used and to be disseminated. Share them with your colleagues, with your friends, with the people in the field that you think can have a beneficial from the use of these guidelines. And since we are still working, the Enclave capacity building is still ongoing. We still envisage and plan some other trainings until the end of this month, which will mark the official end of the projects. And we are trying to share our conclusions and results as best as we can. So thank you very much for your attention for this presentation. I will stop to share my screen, and then we arrive to the final part of this webinar, and we are going to see the contents of the Enclave database. I see that Mari is ready as usual. She's very, very skilled with all these informatic tools, and then also the dissemination dimension and communication dimension of the project. All those aspects will be considered by Mari from the Estonian team. So please, Mari, the floor is yours. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Silvia. Hello to everybody who's listening to us. My name is Mari, and I work in the Women's Support and Information Center together with Pille, and we were responsible for the web page, which has been promoted numerous times today here, and also the database. I will start with the database. It's located on our web page here, and basically all partners collected available information from their countries about different services which help victims of violence. You can see here that all the organizations can be filtered out. These There are like legal aid, psychological counseling, counseling for children, support groups, social counseling, etc., shelter services for victims of violence. And all together, from all the countries, we have over 400 different organizations collected here, 424 to be exact. And you can also filter out everything by the countries itself. For example, if you want to know who would provide you help in Estonia, you can just click on the country. And here's a whole list of different services in Estonia. Or here you also can do the filtering if you want to see which are only the shelter services, then it gives you only the shelters in Estonia or in any other country you're interested in looking at. So it's a very useful tool to find help from each of those countries, and I hope everybody uses it and finds it helpful. To continue, in general, as everybody said today, this is our webpage, enclaveproject.eu, and here we have collected everything you would ever need to know what we have done in this project. So we have a nice introduction here. You can see who are all the project partners and all the project outputs, as was said several times. Project outputs are clickable over here on the main page. Though all the icons and even like here, everything opens up as a PDF in another tab, and you can download it for yourself also. Then, as I said, we have all the information about the partners. Our lead partner, Union of Women's Associations of Heraklion, etc. So we're all here nicely brought out. And the most important page, of course, is the publications. Once again, everything you need is here and in all the partner languages. By the end of the project, all the translations will be there in a week or so. Most of them already are uploaded. We're just missing a few minor documents in translations, but all the files are currently definitely uploaded in English. So you can scroll those all through, and hopefully you all read them through and find them useful, and you can implement all the knowledge in your daily work. We have also developed a leaflet about why we actually did the projects and what were our aims. And you can see all our newsletters here also. And this is it.
Thank you. We were talking so much about the website, not only because it has been done very, very well, but because it's user-friendly and contains everything in a very simple way. So to navigate, to check things, to download things from the website is easy and quick. So you do not have to lose a lot of time browsing, looking, because everything is there, plain and simple, which should be the role of and the aim of a website, to provide information, not to just have you wandering around looking for a wizard to help you to find out a solution. So actually we are practically perfectly on time. I wish to thank you all the participants and all the panelists for their very interesting and relevant presentation, and for having respected the schedule very, very strictly. This is quite rare, and I hope that this project is just the beginning of a new kind of awareness regarding the position, regarding the rights, the situation, the needs of children, victims or witnesses of violence involved in civil and criminal trials. So thank you again, and please have a nice evening and a nice continuation of the day. Thank you so much.